The ship takes the torpedo like a swallowed shout. No warning, just metal and air unmade in a white fist that jerks the bow high and drops it hollow. Alarms scatter through the hull, bells and gongs, boots hammering, and the winter sea comes in as if it has waited at the sill all night. Night stations hold under red lamps. Corridors narrow and pulse. In the wireless office, the world shrinks to hissing dials and sleet needling through a seam that wasn't there a minute ago. A clock ticks once, twice, and quits. Smoke turns the voice tubes to plugged throats. In that red gloom, where paper is as dangerous as fire, a man with a white tape band straightens a glove and goes for the only locker that can keep enemy eyes from their roots before abandon is called. Lieutenant James Hargreave takes the path by muscle memory. 3 steps left of the autodite key, 1 over the combing, shoulder to the bulkhead, where the paint peels under the red wash. The destruction locker is a black mouth with a brass tooth, latch twin-pinned by doctrine and habit. Do it properly, he tells himself. 2-person check, initials in chalk, weight sleeve verified, pin seated, and then a new sound rides under the gongs and water. A slither, as if the sea has found the list and is taking it line by line. The deck tilts. He position checks by touch and feels ice rime the latch, cold dragged in by spray and breath. A step lost is a second burned. Upstairs, a voice is counting down to abandon, and numbers have weight when they borrow lives. Chief Petty Officer Marta Keene is 2 decks up, breaking the ship like a map. Port boats and ladders to the coxswain, starboard scuttle, and munitions to her petty officers. A finger at the wireless flat, because she knows what will be in that locker, and what happens if it floats. The deck is black ice under spilled oil. Every order fights sleet head on. No radios, she calls, even as someone reaches for a handset by reflex and fear. Runners only. Smoke makes aisles out of air, thin and mean, and she feels the ship's shape the way old sailors feel, weather and bone. Time compresses into the beat of water swelling on her whistle, waiting to fall. Under red, Hargreave fumbles the brass latch pin and hears it clink off somewhere, not his palm. He's done this 10 times in daylight, twice at night in drills, never with breath fogging a scarf slick with sleet. The pin, a simple thing, man-high bright when there's time to polish, is now a whisper in wool, a tiny saboteur. He taps the hinge with the heel of his hand. Iron gives, and the locker breathes. Paper, canvas, the dull promise of lead. The weight sleeve lies curled with a strap like a tongue. It should promise oblivion by heft. He drags the bag over his knee, and his hands say the weight's wrong. The ship creaks low. Someone coughs wet. The latch refuses the clean click. Keene's scuttle crew hits forward as the fire finds new air. Something in the wireless office cracks, beam, bottle, and the flames get a map. Red light stutters into a strobe as the emergency feed trips, plunges, returns. In the gaps, everyone is blind. Keene runs the check in her head, pistols tossed over, breech blocks kissed and dropped, secret paper shredded if time, pouches married to the deep. She looks to the dedicated chute, square hatch, knee-high, a color that means nothing in red, and sees a laid curtain of smoke. A young sailor starts, and she hauls him back by the collar. There are more of him than there are of what's in that locker, and that arithmetic is hers. She marks the chute in her mind and sends a runner down for Hargreave. Hargreave cradles the pouch, feels stitching and cold blooming through canvas, and tries to seat the lead sleeve around it like a priest vesting a chalice. The sleeve has a slit and a catch that sticks in summer. Now it wears a thin skin of ice, a bad glove over a worse habit. He tries once with numb fingers. The strap skates and misses the detent. The bow has a new wobble, the kind that means water has made a river inside. 2 signatures on a chalkboard he can't reach anymore flicker across his mind, and he weighs it, check again, or throw. The corridor goes blind, Fire licks along the baseboard like a cat in pain and leaps when something pops. A runner arrives, bent double, grabs Hargreaves' arm, and the two of them make a three-legged dash, trying not to be cooked. The path to the proper chute is gone, erased by heat, rewritten by smoke, so the world shrinks to an opening that knows the sea. A hatch frames a night that looks like coal flurries. The runner peels off to a man whose ankle has turned wrong. Hargreave has the pouch, the wrong-feeling sleeve, and a tremor he can't order away. 2 decks up a whistle cuts, and the ship measures itself against water pushing in forward. He has to choose. On the upper deck, Keene divides the world with a knife hand. Port to boats, starboard to rafts, the forward gun to a man who hates leaving anything he can reach. She refuses a life jacket that would slow her and throws a turn on the davit because the coxswain's hands are too cold to find rope first try. Sleet frosts every surface. Underfoot is the thin quiet of ice. She counts heads and loses one in smoke, finds him crouched with a chin tucked to save a throat. She raises the whistle and doesn't blow. Sound buys speed, and she won't spend it cheap. There is a small way to do right badly, and a grand way to do wrong beautifully. Hargreave picks between. He tests the sleeve once more, pulls the strap until it squeals against metal that won't accept it, and sees the latch pin, half in, not cross-threaded, just shy. It won't seat. His hands are blocks and the pin is slick. The instruction leather-bound in his head says 2-person verification, no less. The clock stopped. The river inside the ship is rising. People are tethering fear to the idea he will do this cleanly. He goes anyway because the fire shows a different color now and a falling weight changes the pitch of the ship's voice. The pouch arcs. For one beat it is an elegant thing, a taut line from shoulder to black beyond, a clean parabola written against sleet turned to needles. He gives it a shade of anger and watches it vanish, taken without ceremony. Relief comes hot under sleet. The body congratulates choosing. Then the sea answers. The pouch reappears, not where he threw it, but sly and wrong, bobbing in an oil rim that lifts it like an offering. Keene sees it through a slit of clear air between gusts, the little square head of canvas belted with dull metal, coming back as if summoned. 2 men at the rail, a third with a boathook chasing a bandage box he thinks matters. She doesn't say it. Saying gives it weight. She drives the men faster or harder, difference measured only by their hunched shoulders. She folds an instruction she won't voice. If it's there when we go, gaff it and blind it with a rock, or let it go and pretend it never showed. The sea slaps the pouch against the ship's shadow, then loses it under chop that breaks like glass. Down in the wireless flat, heat meets cold and makes weather that peels skin. Hargreave feels a hand steady his back and hears his name said like an order. There is no answering a house you've set on fire. He looks out at water already holding bits of his ship, splinters, cork, paper torn to fiber, and knows the proper chute is behind a wall of breathing flame. He knows the error exactly, the unseated sleeve, the shy pin, the wrong catch, sitting in him like a pebble under gum that will ulcer given time. He is a man of checklists. When they fail, they make failure feel stolen. He moves. West wind slaps the ocean into long loaves, and the ship finds troughs with a regularity like a clock trying to resume. Keene is names and numbers that refuse to add. She thinks of routing orders folded into that locker, lists of zig and when to use them, padding that makes sense to writers and men who might read it if it drifts. She files the headings she's seen on clean mornings, Corridor Echo, Zig Sequence 3, behind a door. She won't say them now. Hand on the lifeline, rope ice biting through gloves, she makes a new bet on the rafts. Throw more than we should. Tomorrow can argue. From the dark off, the beam comes a long-drawn growl that might be wave, might be diesel, might be fear turning sound into shapes. Keene looks into black until it looks back and sees nothing. She knows U-boats surface at dawn to breathe and scan drift. Dawn feels like a lie. The sea tells the impatient. Her job is bodies and boats. The idea of a bag afloat with a weight that doesn't know its job is a thought she pushes off as she would home. She blows 3 hard blasts now. Sound buys speed, and maybe speed buys something else. Hargreave tastes salt that isn't his, sea and sweat, and the sweet acrid of burning paint. He steps off the rail and nearly goes, deck leaned like a broken oath. A petty officer who's never liked him much hauls him left-handed toward a ladder and says nothing. He is grateful for economy. In the corner of his eye, the sea plays tricks. Sometimes the pouch is a wave top, sometimes oil with shine, sometimes nothing. It's always there with eyes shut. Open them, and night takes it back. The wind veers. Sleet needles fatten into pellets that sting any skin showing and add a sound like 100 hands drumming on a door. Keen's rope burns freeze. She swaps gloves with a kid whose fingers are raw and open. Boat number 2 kisses water. Fall blocks scream. She wants it away, but a man is wrapped in the davit trace and the sea bucks. Doctrine says 5 minutes to scuttle, life before paper, 2 signatures to destroy. She cuts the trace, burns the glove, and the boat drops clean. The cost is skin. Forward, a deep thud resolves to a cough. A bulkhead opts out of bravery. Water rushes aft with new confidence. Hargreave feels it underfoot, a change in gait. He looks to the waist where once there was a drill for sending things down sure, and sees not a chute, but a redraw. Fire, steam. A current of men moving too fast to count. He thinks he will write the error down in pen ashore. He won't say it out loud. He wonders if anyone saw the pouch pop back up. He knows they did, and that they're doing him the courtesy of calling it a shadow. The crew backs before the sea like men, retreating from an argument they can't win. Keen stands at the rail with a coil on her shoulder and the ship in her hands, choosing the knot that will hold for a man who can't. Kindness and cruelty are the same rope. She orders radio silence that feels like taking a heartbeat from a living thing and watches operators leave headsets round their necks like collars they've untied. Orders start running by messenger again, bodies passing words like blood. The ship is now rooms connected by nerve. The seas rise into a tempo they can't dance to. Beaufort numbers mean less than the way a wave lifts and drops with conviction. Hargreave sits hard at a ladder's foot and stares at paint runs because they're easier than imagining a strap that didn't seat. He sees the book in the bag, headings in his tidy hand, padding phrases written so often they come in sleep. He watches them in water, ink bleeding to gray, words washed to bones. He stands. On the bridge, a voice like iron speaks calm into wind that shears it before it reaches throats. Keen takes the tone and duplicates it at the waist with hands when breath is dear. She knows the engine room will hold until told, or until water gives the quiet order first. She rests the whistle at her mouth, as if metal cold can fix something rattling inside. Astern in churned foam, a wrong thing keeps its own course, trimming to each wavelet like a small boat with a destination. Men go over, not in panic, but with an impatience that looks like will. Rafts bloom pale and taut, skate on ice forming as fast as it breaks. Keen slides down a line into a boat because a hand is there that won't find her without weight. She will climb back. She knows it. The sea licks her boots and tastes her. She counts again, lies to herself once, and asks for one more raft. The pouch is somewhere she can't look, riding the ship's tail like a refusal. Hargreave speaks at last, to no one. The pin. A man grunts without hearing. He could swallow it and carry the hot coal until a place exists to set it down. He wants to go back, absurd and pure, and fix a thing now wider than his reach. The ship dips, bowsprit toward a black that curves all lines. A hand on his shoulder squeezes. No comfort, just instruction. Move. He goes with the others toward the stern where the water climbs with less appetite and stares at white stipple that marks where things float. From the freezing dark aft, the shape turns on a little swell. It is small, stubborn, unafraid. It thinks in headings and time. It waits where wake hides it, and light will find it next. Astern, in the black churn, the failed weight bides for first light. In the ship's shadow, the wrong weight holds for dawn. It rides the swell like a drowned lung that refuses to give up air, canvas slick with sleet, edges rimed in salt. The sea, hoarse from a night of shouting, sags into a gray with no warmth, only distance. The stars bleed away. A smear of pale on the eastern rim drags black into merciless tone. The pouch turns, flashes brass, rolls. No one who threw it knows it lives. The ocean keeps secrets. But anything that floats draws eyes when the horizon empties of ships, and there is always a pair of eyes waiting for morning. He surfaces with care that looks like impatience. Oberleutnant Karl Voss breaks through pewter skin with the restraint he keeps on his voice. Batteries thirst, Doctrine demands as little sky as possible. Doctrine also says, trawl. The conning tower sheds salt. Deck crew brace against flat fists of sea. Dawn is when you gather what night leaves: wood, wreckage, names. Papier oder Tafeln, he says into a scarf wet with his breath, papers or plates, a promise he shouldn't make. Every extra minute topside invites a line on the horizon to stiffen into a gun. He takes the boathook from a midshipman and leans into the gray. A gull wheels and scolds. Canvas, a brass wink, the wrong geometry of a made thing. The hook bites, slips, bites again. The pouch comes as if insulted, not captured. It slaps wet on deck, heavy with the water it should have embraced. Voss swears at the weight that should have made it simple. The sleeve should have sent it down. Inside, he snaps, and men push canvas through the hatch with a rattle that hushes. Under red lamps, the color is for shock, not night. Low ceilings, diesel taste, the tick of a clock that knows its place. The pouch coughs water and paper like a chest punched. A radio man with salt-scarred hands teases sheets apart, careful because greed tears. Ink bleeds across grids, but headings cling. Military print meant to endure sweat and salt. Zig Sequence 3 peers through bruised blue. Corridor Echo refuses to dissolve. He shouldn't know those phrases. He does. Voss thinks of lanes like tracks on water. He knows how convoys breathe. Slow for weather, throttle for fuel. He knows Doctrine. Trail at dusk, strike at midnight, dive at dawn. He knows HFDF makes words dangerous. His own operator uses only bursts, needles in a sky of listeners. He's never had the padding, the filler that isn't turning timing into map. The book names a window but means an hour, calls a diversion echo, and ties it to a falling glass, lays out zigs keyed to GMT like a metronome. Could it be a trick? He answers with his fingertips. No liar inks like this. Plotting board, he says. The navigator is already moving. Down in western approaches, an officer drags red yarn over a wall like stitching a wound. They all do it. Threads sling from pins labeled with convoy codes and arrivals. Commander Elsie Davenport does not stand so much as lean. Such rooms tilt you as if your body keeps the map flat. Phones never stop. The ringing goes from harrying to ambient to pulse. Routine losses, someone says, no celebration allowed. 2 ships on the outer column gone. Weather did much. Beaufort 7 shells, crew. Within tolerance for now. She signs because the pen must move. When tolerance shrinks, she will ask what she missed. Above the damp book, condensation daisy petals on steel. Someone coughs with cold lung honesty. Time presses. 40 minutes. Doctrine. The paper gives him a thing wireless never will. The convoy's inner rhythm. Corridor Echo, used when alpha is fouled. Transition window, GMT, 0200 0400. Zig Plan 3 rotates on the half hour if Beaufort exceeds 6. Padding phrase, lunch for the dog, means Zig right to 45. Their jokes hide orders poorly. He doesn't love the enemy. He admires craft. He turns pages with care, more weapon than treasure. A petty officer flips the leaf with a fingernail. Schedules bloom. The book needs no radio to betray. It speaks of changing lanes as if there are street signs. It shows arcing escorts bound by tanks and orders. Fuel limits fury. Search arcs bloom like predictable flowers. The book tells a hunter where to stand, not for what prey says, but how it breathes. Voss jabs a pencil at his present location, the intercept if he sits on Echo's shoulder. The pencil breaks. The periscope brings him day. Through that little circle, the surface seduces and threatens. He lifts, slides, dissects. Tiny waves mirror a sky undecided about snow. Nothing. Then something, far west, a smear that might be smoke. Stay? The longer he breathes air, the more likely a lonely swordfish will gossip down his chimney. There is a time when convoys slip from one page to the next. It's in a hand that believed ink and ocean were enough. He risks 10 minutes. Risk burns real. A lookout barks and points, not target, but fear of being wrong. The tower turns like a neck. Voss sees nothing and everything. A gull, weed, a bunkboard, a wake like a distant whale. The sea is full of movement that isn't prey. He hates it. He wants one more ruthless pass along debris. The boathook clacks on rail. A second leaf drops from the pouch like insult. A log in another hand, tied by ritual to the codebook. Padding phrases penciled with meanings beside, a petty officer's illicit crib. Lunch for the dog, Zig 3 R45, 11 o'clock tea, Zig 3 L30, concert on, line abreast, farmer sleeps, echo option. Human error makes systems work, then fail. Voss flattens the page, thinks of the hour, past dawn. The change happens on the second hour past midnight GMT, a time now living in tendons. He knows where to wait. Dive, he orders, not fleeing, waiting. In the map room, Davenport watches colored pins move like they always do when someone breathes on them, enough to lie progress. An adjutant lists C's along alternates. Alpha is a grinder. Crews report ice on rails, numb fingers, jammed gears, and stubbornness making bad decisions. Echo is open but thin on patrol. Fuel budgets and primaries keep escorts in constant risk rather than speculative. Weather grinds duty. She sees system inertia. No cause yet to suspect a breach. The loss of material report is terse. A captain's pride sparing his record the shame of a missing binder. She'll learn in days. The navigator marks time like a priest, stopwatch in hand. War is clocks and blood. The plan rotates on a fixed GMT interval. There will be a moment when a convoy commander, hunched over a damp chart, consults the same grid Voss just traced and orders a turn. The sea stays the same. The math moves. Voss positions for that. A civilian clerk at Derby House catalogs last week's route change requests. Shabby cuffs, tidy mind, an eye for sequence. He notes 2 convoys hit near sheet changeovers, clusters where the clock rules. He writes a note. It is not a note to stop the world. He pockets urgency. He wonders if the sea has tastes. The note slides into a pile that will grow stiff before anyone cuts twine. Cold makes small metal treacherous. A latch pin becomes betrayal, a weight sleeve, an ornament. On the escort that night, spray iced the very mechanism meant to drown secrets. In Hargreaves' hands, procedure demanded 2-person comfort in hell. He pulled the pin and the sleeve didn't bite. Numb, he called it good, with fire crawling into a room of coiled wire. He isn't here to watch a misseated sleeve turn a pouch into a buoy and a buoy into a beacon. The story keeps him anyway. Voss flexes patience. He waits through a slack hour, time only raising shoulders. He considers surfacing to sniff the horizon and refuses. His own rules fit better. Stay with the math. The next zig comes at the half hour. The alternate lane puts them here. He moves a degree, 2, 5, slows. It feels like standing in a hall knowing which handle will turn because you hear the hand. The periscope rises. On her map, Davenport's yarn obeys. It swings to cover an alternate chosen by Storm and Prudence. Phones chirp and rasp. A corvette captain asks to deviate. His sonar is telling him a story he doesn't trust. She says what Doctrine says. Fuel first, economy of effort. Stay in lane. She isn't unkind. She's preserving him for tomorrow. Lines in air are what they are. Wolfpacks coordinate by whispers so small you trip on them unheard. Somewhere, a whisper sits in a bag in Lorient. He sees shadows before steel. Voss stills his breath to keep lens from fogging. Dots bleach into backs under a day that can't warm. White guts of sea spill from bows that have punched all night. Numbers comfort and endanger. Weather bunches, ships into walls a predator can match. The book said they'd be here now, not by name, but by habit. 7, then 12, then the escort thinking itself a shepherd with enough dogs. Torpedoes are coins. Doctrine says save. Greed says spend. He pulls both hands back. He signals the pack with a nib of sound. He has something they don't, the curtain hiding the stage manager's hand. The burst vanishes. Somewhere a boat turns its dream into this. He lines a solution and discards it. He wants the breath after the zig, the instant of vulnerability. He waits. The ship that dies doesn't know why with any more honesty than the last. The convoy lashes the radio. The radio bites back with silence because minimal signals are orders. Wolfpacks live by smell. They can't break rules when the sea comes in. An escort throws charges into water not yet troubled. Voss is far enough not to blush. He hears their dulls, feels his boat tremble with a low wounded note. He has time to cut across a moving wall for another. In Liverpool, first reports chalk themselves into a column named, without admitting feeling, losses. Davenport writes, date, weather, lane. It's not yet a spike, but a tooth where there should be gum. She asks for the last day's alternate lane usage in that quadrant. A clerk nods and becomes machinery. A phone mutters, an American escort complaining about printing lags and mixed code on board. She hates that the talk is legitimately late. Not yet noon, Voss's men bring up another scrap. Not the book, just a page waterlogged, heading Standing Signals, Acknowledge on Receipt, with a petty margin. Keep quiet day after heavy weather. Wolfpacks use routine traffic to bait. He laughs without sound. The enemy instructs him on hunting around patches. He orders hard shadow, screws down to low music that makes listeners think the band is far. 1 more hour, then down, he promises. Hunger prowls. Davenport hears the first hint that the enemy is not reading words, but cadence. A junior voice says convoys get found when routes change between sheets. She asks for timing logs. She asks why the loss of material report reads clean when fire and current are greedy. She will be fooled a day, maybe 2. She doesn't plan to give them. Men scrape frost off pipes with nails because doing something feels like warmth. Voss wears impatience like a too-tight coat. He gives himself a cutoff and breaks it. He watches the convoy move into the next leg and counts torpedoes left against the lesson he wants to teach. He decides he can afford it. He lies, not in love with an idea, in love with a line. Escorts lean until water walks decks and wonders about staying. A boatswain screams at a boy to tie what never comes loose until it does. The boy hears only his chest drum. On a bridge, a man checks a printed zig bracelet like a talisman and moves because paper says so. Somewhere ashore, someone moves yarn and thinks the same. All obey a book. One reads the wrong one. A squall lifts and slams. The convoy disappears into steel gray. Voss raises the scope and gets blank. He orders a blind chase, yesterday's sin, affordable now because he has the pattern. The navigator gives set and drift. Voss nods at numbers with more faith than he ever gave God. A new hull moans in the headset. He smiles. No chance here, only strategy made mechanical. He doesn't see the plane that isn't. Shadow is cloud. Fear is old. He drawers it shut. Davenport steps off the wall. She orders the next convoy out of Newfoundland to take the alternate lane for storm, but push its start 3 hours to break something she feels forming. She doesn't say breach. She says coincidence. Fear is news. She hears it. The unsunk pouch has already earned its medal. The sea wants irony. In another wake, a page, freed of brass and gilt, slips down a scupper. A small white truth returning to quiet. Voss sits on his scope. Davenport puts her hand on a pin. The next convoy walks into an alternate lane, the pages labeled by hour, not name. The next convoy walks into an alternate lane, the pages labeled by hour, not name. Night clamps like a lid as convoy on 91 shoulders into a corridor few skippers ever choose. A table lane, taught in training, avoided until weather and schedule shove. Fine sleet hangs in red bridge light like dust. Spray glazes rails and gun shields blue with cold. They think they're off the beaten path. They believe their zigs are known only to safes and heads that tick GMT like prayer. Riding just beyond sight is a presumption no hunter should have, and a wolf pack strung along their future, reading not names, but hours. Oberleutnant Karl Voss hears first contact through rubber and brine, a low Doppler slide across his hydrophone man's face like a flinch. The book lies open on his table, salted, dried, edges stiff where headings still speak. Corridor echo. Zig Sequence 3. His pencil taps a printed window, changeover at Joe 200 GMT, 3 legs 15 minutes, and his flaw narrows to a blade. Ahead slow, 18 meters. He waits where tables say a convoy puts itself next. He reads rhythm. He waits. The first explosion comes before any sight. A merchantman aft and outboard, timed between a zig and the next, hull lifted and broken in an oil parabola that sets like a prayer rug. Voss listens to panic cascade. Escorts rev, turn, charges roll, 1001, 1002. Bloom. He slides to 70 and takes them down the slope, using their fear to muffle trimming clank. Risk spikes each minute he sits inside their weave. Every turn matches his crib. The sea is a clock. He reads minutes, not miles. On the corvette, Pembroke Rose, North Atlantic veteran cut to a toy under this sky, Marta Keene braces her knees against a sea's heel and counts survivors in strobe dark. She hauls men with fingers that can't feel and hears the enemy's shell game. They're not chasing call signs, they're erasing margins. Her art, bodies before cold, collides with radios. Talk, coordinate. But even before the order, radios are blasphemy. Any long signal points a finger. She hates the compromise and makes it anyway, dropping Carly floats without lamps and going blind into a sea that punishes pause. Routine losses, Davenport wrote 3 days ago when curves were smooth. Now pins with blue collars clump along the corridor marked for weather diversions. The story refuses abstraction. Phones blur into hum. Yarn knits like indictment. Ships hurt when they come off rails because of clocks, not whistles. Her error isn't caution. It's trusting a report that said, no loss of material when fires and tides say otherwise. She calls section heads before pride can call her back. At dawn, when seas flatten enough to show distant fume, Voss risks the scope. On his collapsible table, a card trick. 2 fish now. Wait for the zig. Then 1 more. Spare the rest. He wants to spend them all. He wants a tally that sings. Fuel and teachers pull him clean into compromise. He aims at outliers, those blown off station by foul weather. The book makes this easy. It names lanes captains think are theirs and shows where wind and ice strip the slowest. A freighter with cargo hatches white with frost wanders where he waits. He nods. The boat sighs as ballast adjusts. Patience held on a knife. In Liverpool, Davenport squints at time blocks like stains. Changeovers, every 4 hours, daylight shunted and renamed, fit too snugly with ambush windows. She lifts a ledger from a clerk, pink-cheeked, stubborn, who has penciled ZO200, 0600, 1000, 1400, incidents cluster. The clerk, mortified, says wolfpacks may be executing schedules that fit Appendix C, not chatter. Davenport looks up, and the room tilts. If that line's compromised, patterns are no longer theirs. Section heads, she repeats. Mixed editions bite without showing teeth. Press delays in Reykjavik mean escorts leave Iceland with last week's tables while St. John's runs current. Outports missed packets, snow-stalled tenders. The result? Differential zig, a convoy with 3 clocks for one turn, stretching itself thin where a hunter's hook fits. Davenport knows this mess from peace. In war, it touches bone. She does math on a signal pad. Each hour of delay extends vulnerability 6 miles, more in gales. She drafts a fix that feels like heresy. Dead reckon for 24 hours. Kill cleverness. In the North Atlantic, cleverness is blood. Escorts, constrained by fuel, cannot sprint forever. They hunt in arcs plotted beside freighters they guard. The arcs are predictable. Stiffness is baked in by tanks and fatigue, so even their hunts become tells. Voss steps around those floorboards, times a turn to a zig, slides under like a knife that knows ribs. Hydrophones bleed the secret. Radio rooms have gone quiet. No chat, no update, just faithful ticks of time-based moves. It's all he could want, and a warning. Minds are waking. Keene measures loss like a careful clerk with frozen hands. The boat she missed takes 6. She counted breathing. The lamp that could have saved them stayed dark to keep a wolf from tracing smoke. Her split priorities have names now. A runner hisses through sleet that signals is under order to reduce. She hears code inside code. Don't think, don't ask, do less. She hates quiet like sin and enforces it like penance. She confiscates a lighter, kills a cigarette on a lookout's lip, ties off a flag line a signalman thinks is his. Her voice, which pulled men toward boats and away from fire, is now the blade that cuts comfort. The sea climbs under every choice. In a stained office at Derby House, a captain stands thin with no sleep and anger under rails. He won't write possible compromise of cipher material. His pride is not vanity. It's armor for men who failed because procedures were written by dry hands. If he signs, he consigns his signals officer to ruin. He believes the fire did its duty. Davenport wants to shout that she's seen pieces of that duty in enemy hands across cold miles. Shouting makes no converts. She thanks him, dismisses him, writes it herself. The dark point isn't a single sinking. It's the gap between belief and pattern. Overnights, 2 convoys bleed into the same bracketed hours, tide carrying doom. Western approaches moves pins, peels yarn. Reports make no wireless sense, only printed schedule sense. Davenport walks between maps like a priest and feels her own plan press. She halts not ships, but language. No more standing signals that harmonize with stolen cribs, nothing in code that echo tables made in ink. She will tear rhythm from the ocean. At his table, Voss catches the gap as it appears. A convoy slides off expected zig into uneven. An escort search degrades from book to anxious. Absence shouts. He could surface and gun cripples, but instincts trained by success now want longevity. He shadows hard instead, restraint hurting, and tries to smell a missing habit like a fisherman reading slicks. In a wireless room that still smells of burned paint, Lieutenant James Hargreave lives split between then and now, the red flare, sleet on hot metal, and this moment, new sheets under chain and key. He's moved to a sister ship for competence without apology and walks to work like a penitent. He feels the brass pin in his glove again, the sleeve that slipped. The order arrives like a slice. Purge Appendix C, burn schedules marked Echo, anything tied to timing windows. He wants to argue blindness. He wants to beg that his error not measure someone else's night. He breaks wax and feeds a second book to flame. The clerk, eyes gritty from hours matching ship names to hours on grids, stays into dark. He finds the pivot no one wanted. Both spike nights align with schedule changeovers announced by padding jokes. Tea at 4? Change the watch. Harmless to all hands, convenient to enemy. If a list exists, a clever reader predicts the moment a zig rotates. He takes the flimsy upstairs, throat dry, lighting a fuse. Presses groan alive. Orders go to destroy compromised sheets, past temporary signals by runner and lamp. Mersey presses thump like mills under levee. Distance is the problem. Reykjavik, St. John's, Kirkwall won't feel heat for days. Mixed editions multiply. A destroyer sails on old tables because a courier bogged and a captain trusted Doctrine over suspicion. Davenport sees the bottleneck freeze like harbor ice and chooses a draft. Send blanks to fill safes so prying eyes find nothing. Buy time. Gray swallows night. On 91 lies tired in troughs. Keene watches a stretcher slide, catches it with her boot, saves a man who coughs black water and says a name like a lighthouse. The order from radio is savage. No acknowledgments to route changes. No replies to weather. No comfort. She passes it with a steady hand and thinks of the dozen on that raft who would have lived if a lamp had burned. Fury goes in a box. She tightens a line and calls a count. Voss hears improvisation in the hull's murmur. He has chased Doctrine. Now he hunts fear. Their screws surge at odd intervals. Escorts refuse neat boxes and zig drunk. He picks where old habits leak, fuel arcs still dictating cautious charges, and aims for those. His impatience resurges, tamped by the feel that the book drains by the hour they stop matching. He sends a brief burst to the pack. Pattern shift, follow hydrophone, attack on my mark only. He brushes HFDF, a hand settles on his neck. Davenport plants both palms on the case over the yarn. The room is quieter. She signs a reroute that doesn't use corridors by name or hour. For one day, she writes, use C and I's and lat long like it's 1916. She adds a note. Burn Appendix C in an officer's presence. Witness ash with time code. Report by dispatch boat if necessary. She looks at the clerk and says, carry the fire. He nods and runs. Dockside at Greenock, incinerators roar like contained squalls. Men feed them with reverence, spines stiff as if burning wrong words might summon luck. Pages curl and blacken with glue and ink and old sweat. The night takes their light up in a pillar visible from the river mouth. A dockyard man fishes a sheet from his boot, reads Zig Sequence 3, can't place its danger, shoves it back. In hot eddy behind, a corner tears free and lifts. Hargreave on a bridge wing watches flags he learned as a boy come down. He thinks of Keene in strobe corridors with water at the knee, choosing bodies. He thinks of brass that slid like fish. He wants to message apology and warning and has only orders, now finally cutting right. He goes to the radio room, opens the safe not for wisdom but for a tin to eat it. The operator, eyes wet for unnamed reasons, gives him a match. He lights. In a U-boat's bowels a motor stutters, a mechanic curses, a fish that should have slid like a bullet hangs a breath and leaves late. The miss is narrow, humiliating, instructive. Voss takes it like a teacher's slap. The Convoy has stopped being metronome. It's a band of half-trained men inventing. Even this church of efficiency cannot turn invention into a table. He notes it, rises to Periscope, sees only gray and foam, orders shadow. Prudence demands time. It costs kills. Liverpool phones still ring, but the ring feels like being found wanting. Davenport counts with a captain aloud over a dead circuit, giving him only his voice and numbers to carry him through a turn. She hangs up and looks at the clerk, breathing like he ran a mile. Go home. He refuses. She shrugs. The wall waits. A runner arrives soaked with a dispatch from Kirkwall. New orders delivered by a yeoman who bartered rides through 2 towns. He watched a stack of Appendix C burn, ash gray and even ash clinging to boots. Davenport takes the report and the dirt he leaves as proof that more than paper is burning. She thinks of the first pouch that bobbed and decides the next will go down like a stone. The cold doesn't respect paper. Keene's hands blister under saline gloves, ice threads sleeves. Breath turns rags to glass that break when she moves. The sea is stone rolling, the Convoy groans. Then comes the order she didn't believe could exist. Silence all standing signals. Move by runner, acknowledge nothing. She puts the word nothing in her mouth like a coin and moves. Voss signals once, low, short, wait. HFDF scopes see a smear as big as the ocean. He puts the wet book away for the last time and closes the clasp with care he doesn't waste on much. He knows it's relic now, not oracle. The Atlantic wears its iron face. The world tilts. He wonders which commander on the other side saw what he saw and whether their hands shook like his. In her office, Davenport weighs words and chooses none. She orders blackout on standing signals, no acknowledgments, no comfort, only movement. She signs and lifts a receiver. The single syllable that cuts their own lines clean leaves her mouth and drops into rooms that live on talk. In rooms built on noise, silence arrives like a vacuum. At Western approaches, the phone clatter stops mid-ring. Operators freeze with pencils lifted. The wall map waits while red yarn sags in its own weather. Davenport holds the handset like a pistol and gives the word that kills acknowledgments and comfort phrases, turns every frequency to dead air. Eyes go to the clock. Gray convoys are alone until legs catch them. The first consequence crawls across a gale. A convoy in Beaufort 8, bows smashing slate hills, destroyers with fuel gauges dictating turns. Without standing signals to call clean zigs, bridges reach for tables and find them suspect. The plan is on time, but belief isn't. Helms hesitate. Those hesitations multiplied are a pattern a periscope can read like lanterns. In a vault, old codebooks stack damp at edges from hands. The petty officer draws a pencil line. Retire. Obsolete. New editions haven't cleared presses in Reykjavik. Newfoundland won't see them for days. Mixed editions mean mixed rules. A cross-current Davenport signs into with her eyes on yarn, showing a convoy entering a lane those stolen pages, name by time. Off the Hebrides fog walks in. With radios muzzled, signalsmen go to flag, lamp, and the failure baked in both. A rating runs a wet deck with a satchel to pass a change that alters 60 miles. The bosun who takes it is keen, hair stiff with brine, jaw set. She remembers a locker latch that never seated, and then men in water. She passes the packet without blessing. The destroyer astern sees neither lamp nor flag through clot and keeps it straight. Under the same fog, a low steel spine slides. Voss stands scarf-wrapped, gray with fatigue. Batteries hum. His radio man needs condensation from a burst box. Doctrine. Keep reports short, near static. He has paper now, pages stinking of bilge with titles of zigs and padding that kites maneuvers. He does not need their voice. He needs their pulse. Fog buys minutes. He holds longer than Doctrine writes. The convoy makes its change an hour late, not by chance, but because bridges have been thrown back on human rhythm. The delay is a window. Voss turns it into math. The navigator arcs a wet chart with a stub, marks steel against static sea. Voss lifts the periscope just enough to catch masts slide like teeth. The pack isn't a line, it's a parabola closing. In Liverpool, a clerk stands with palms flat on steel and waits for Braid to look past habit. She has it. Reading padding is reading tempo, not tune. The enemy taps a wrist, not a wire. Davenport calls her up and listens. The cure is ugly. Unstandardize without saying it. Inject human variability into a system built to kill it. Orders go out by runner and seaplane bag. Do not use echo at 12 GMT. Do not use Zig 3 on the second bell. Burn pages ashore with witness. Incinerators roar in wind that slices ears. Men in caps feed secret into red mouths. Ash lifts and snow returns it to cheeks. A signalman watches flame and remembers brass in numb gloves. He wonders whose fault buoyancy can be and shoves doubt in his pocket. An outport captain hasn't filed. Pride rides his bones. His table shows no loss beyond regulation, and a small escort sails with an old insert, tucked red. He's told no one. A trawler-turned-minesweeper comes alongside to deliver a runner with silence orders and finds him gone. The runner hands the packet to a coxswain with his hands full of lives. Weather that kept Voss safe now bunches convoys into windows. Backs bow into identical hills when fuel dictates when to sprint and when to loiter. An escort commander, told to acknowledge nothing, watches foam and counts whether he can spare 4 knots for screen. He cannot. He is where the book says he'll be, not from trust, but because physics says no alternative. A radio room sits like a church after Mass, clocks ticking, chairs squeaking, men listening to a world that has become a wolf's forest. A junior operator, raised on crystal sets and magazine codes, mourns voices. Orders say, "Love silence." He wraps arms around himself and hears his ship, steel complaining under climb, mess pans skidding when the deck lies. Voss leverages silence by aiming at discipline left. Those padding phrases once drew neat lines in time. Without them, improvisation still has anchors, watches on wrists, runners' paths, the minutes for a bosun to thread a paper forward through spray. He charts the human lags. He lines a laggard, waits for a swell to lift his tube to line. The torpedo flicks off like accusation, wake white even in slate. It hits under number 3 hold, beef, coil rope, shaving kits, and the noise is the same as when Hargreaves' bow came apart, frozen lake cracking to thunder. Keen, on a different deck now, knuckles sliced on a cleat, barks orders in a cadence she knows. Boats, scuttle forward, documents to shoot. The chute takes nothing, paper already burned. The locker holds only air. Back in Liverpool, Davenport steps before the map while yarn slumps like old nerves. Since the silence, losses rise, but not where the book predicted, on fringes where improvisation congregates. She draws a finger along a seldom-used lane, then back. The clerk says, unasked, that if the enemy reads tempo, they'll dodge places where men feel bold enough to invent. Davenport nods and orders routes that look like error and are correct to no one but her. Presses in outports stammer, ink rough on finger pulp. Fresh sheets stack under weights that bite. Lead sleeves sit in boxes, tagged heavier. Brass pins and bowls singing cold. A chief shows a new latch, larger, for dead hands. 2-person check stays, changed. The second person checks for ice, not initials. They dunk a pouch in a barrel, sink, sink, sink. No one smiles. Barrels aren't sea. The U-boat that fished a book runs lower, batteries sulking from too many fog days, topside. Voss has turned pages into creed. The creed says, press at changeover, crack the screen first. The pack gets his whisper pips and spreads, each guessing where human teeth slip. RAF finds nothing. Weather says no. Admiralty hears absence of radio and presence of flares. The proud captain comes ashore in diesel, and fish stink and says nothing. His crew says everything in sagging faces. The missing book surfaces without water. A clerk catches a cereal that doesn't match ash count. Davenport takes it like a tooth missing and tastes blood. The scope is broader, breach older. She drafts an order to break a habit older than wire. Kill the padding. Strip the jokes. Decouple zigs from clocks. Change on wind shifts, sun breaks, petty coughs. Make the ocean the clock. It's terrifying and costs, but it gives weather back initiative and takes it from pages. Runners leave with that in envelopes. Under awnings and in cabs, men read and feel, wrists unclench. At sea, a captain waits for a sheet of spray to blind a bridge and then orders the new zig. His starboard escort curses and then sees sense. No watch would choose this second. In the U-boat, Voss curses too, as the heartbeat he learned skips in a new place. He rolls to adjust. A swell hikes the periscope 2 inches too high. The thin line cuts fog. One aircraft is up, a tired Hudson whose crew knows the value of a square of light. They catch the glint and turn without asking. A canister drops, ash and vapor in fall, and a white boil walks across gray like the sea found teeth. Voss shoves down, men grip anything fixed. He makes depth, charges follow with patience that feels like malice. The boat lives, his room shrinks. Davenport reads the 2 lines from a crew that saw a flash and dropped a string. She feels the fractional tilt of a tide she can't see. Yarn is still a mess of old thought, but calls talk less of being found in the slot and more of being caught breathing. She signs another burn, this one killing public phrases 3 years too familiar. Frequencies stay cold. Silence is posture, not panic. Keene stands on a quay as books make smoke. Incinerators roar like seas in reverse. Somewhere in Q is the manual that taught her lashings. Somewhere in ash is padding that once comforted. A dockyard youth hands her a new red pouch. It is heavier than she expects, stitched meaner, pin like a nail. She drops it out of fear and relief and catches it with a laugh she can't explain. The last pages that couldn't make fire yet are guarded like prisoners, escorted by men in tin hats who haven't slept. A driver takes a corner too hard, a file slides, waterlogged, the final survivor of a chain, and skates under a bench.